Give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to make the Instagram story to promote the stream, and then we'll get started. Hold on. Live covering election night 2020. All right, folks, welcome everyone to our coverage of 2023 election night. We got some stuff to talk about. Governor's election over in Kentucky, not looking that good. Senate and House races in Virginia, also not looking that good. And ballot referendums in Ohio, also not looking that good, but we'll talk about it tonight, and we'll be giving you live coverage of these election results as they come in, and of course, your favorite person's analysis, all coming in tonight on the Vince Dow Show. Stay tuned, and we're back. I know it's been a while. All right, folks, we are live. I know it has been a while here. What is playing on that? Okay, no, we're good. We are live. I know it has been a while here. Long story short, last week, I've been sick for a while, but I just could not stop coughing, and I have not had a voice, and I didn't have one up until yesterday, but I slept in till about 3 p.m. today. I kid you not. I slept until 3 p.m. because I've been so exhausted, and all of a sudden I kind of feel better. So maybe that's what it is. So anyways, we are back. That's about what happened last week and why we weren't live so much. Enough about me. Let's get right into tonight. We got a lot of elections to cover, but before we begin, folks, right now, be sure to leave a like on the stream, subscribe if you are new, and of course, if you would like to support our show tonight, or you got thoughts, comments, questions for me, whatever, feel free to do so via the super chats. Anyways, let's get started tonight talking a little bit about this Kentucky governor's race, because it's kind of the main election of the night, although we do got quite a bit of different things to talk about. But long story short, and I'm going to kind of give everyone... Okay, dude, I just did this, New York Times. Shut up. Okay, anyways, as I was saying, so over in Kentucky, for those of you who are not super familiar with this election, you may be looking in right now and saying, how the heck is a Democrat winning the Kentucky governor's race? So long story short, you got this character, Andy Beshear. His dad was formerly a governor of Kentucky. And in 2019, he kind of miraculously, I think the final margin was about 5,000 votes, managed to unseat Bevin, who was the former Republican governor. Long story short, that former Republican was super incompetent, corrupt. He had a huge scandal with the teachers' unions, all this stuff. So long story short, this quote-unquote moderate Democrat pulls an upset in 2019 in Kentucky, and that's the reason why we are where we are right now. Now, the deal with Andy Beshear, again, this is the Democratic incumbent governor of Kentucky, is he's basically been positioning himself as a fake moderate, right? So when you actually look at his stances on the issues and the things he's actually pushed and advocated for, he's a generic liberal Democrat, right? Very far to the left in terms of what you would expect out of a state like Kentucky, of all places. The problem, though, has been he has not been able to really get anything passed because the Republican legislature there obviously has a supermajority, considering it is Kentucky. In fact, I think in many different cases, they've actually overridden the Beshear Democrat veto and just passed their own things. So what we essentially have here is a sort of lame duck Democrat who has now positioned himself as a moderate, and a lot of the voters in Kentucky, as you clearly can see right now, the current margins, Andy Beshear is up by 7 with 51% of the vote in. It's not been called yet. It's not actually over, but with Daniel Cameron, the Republican here, down 50,000 votes approximately there. It's not looking good. And, that's essentially the situation we're in. We have a fake moderate who's actually... Oh, We got a vote dump here. Margins are still about the same. It's give or take about a 50,000 vote lead there for Bashir. Long story short, we have a fake moderate who people assume to be a moderate because he's not been able to pass anything liberal because the Republicans, as you could imagine, control the legislature there by such a big margin. And so, I'm looking at it right now. Louisville has reported a decent amount. 33%. It's just generally speaking, I'm not exactly even an expert on how Kentucky entirely reports, but you look at 52% in, and, we're down about 48,000 votes. I'm not saying it can't change necessarily, but, Bashir was expected to win this race. It looks like he's going to. I'm not saying it's completely over, but it does not look good here for Daniel Cameron, the Republican. And it seems so far that with every vote in, every new kind of minor vote dump, that margin has more or less held. Now, we still do have a lot of rural counties left to report, but, it's just really disappointing to see, because it really is, I think, in many ways, an issue of voter education. Right, because if you look at the 2020, I don't think I have it pulled up here, but if you look at the 2020, right, how Kentucky goes on a presidential level, it's basically Louisville and Lexington, they go blue and the whole state goes red. But we have a lot of misinformed rural conservative voters. Maybe they are ancestral Dems when you consider the history of the South and all that stuff, but rural conservative voters who think that Andy Bashir is some type of moderate or he cares about the people. Again, you look at this guy on the issues, he is very liberal. Okay, he is not distinguishable at all from your generic liberal Democrat, okay? But simply because, again, the Republican legislature has been passing things and overriding the veto on his behalf, they think Andy Bashir is some type of moderate, dare I say even some type of conservative. It's totally disappointing. And then when you talk about Daniel Cameron here, the Republican, I know naturally probably the narrative is going to be that this is Donald Trump's fault because Donald Trump endorsed Daniel Cameron. And we'll talk about that probably as the night goes on. But long story short, I really wouldn't attribute to that. Daniel Cameron was already kind of the front runner in this race. He was the Kentucky Attorney General. So he really was the best choice anyone had. I know DeSantis endorsed Kelly Craft, who by all accounts probably would have been an even less electable candidate here. At least Daniel Cameron is a sitting office holder there. Like I said, we were not favored to win this election, but it's certainly still just kind of painful and disappointing to watch. Now, you may, of course, say, Vince, who really cares about this? Because, the next time around, I'm pretty sure he's term limited. I don't know how it actually works in Kentucky. But the next time he's not up for re-election, Republicans will win this race easily. And even now, it doesn't make a difference in Kentucky because Republicans have such a big majority in the House there. And to that I say, it's not about that. Okay, it's not about the fact that this is going to change Kentucky politics or one governor's race necessarily matters all that much. I really look at it from this perspective. Since about 2021, Glenn Youngkin winning in Virginia was kind of the last big win for Republicans here. We went up 0.1%. So there you go. All right, there you go. We're sweeping here, guys. No, but in all seriousness, I think the thing you hopefully wanted to see tonight, although we were not really favored in any of these races, the abortion Ohio referendum was projected to pass. It looks like it's going to pass. We'll talk about it in a second. The Kentucky governor's race, it seemed like the Democrats were going to win. This is what's happening. In Virginia, it seemed like the Democrats were going to flip the House. Again, that's actually up for grabs right now, but I would say at least 51% is probably going to happen. Again, are these huge surprises? No. But when you consider the fact that nationwide Republicans have had a really bad stretch the past year or so. Okay, 2022, you know how that went. It was obviously a massive disappointment. In many ways, it was kind of a massacre in some ways, right? And you look at 2023 now, I'm not saying that this Kentucky race has really anything to do with 2024 in the presidential race. I think it's an anomaly in many ways. You know, you have this fake moderate governor against kind of a weak candidate, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't attribute it to much. In fact, if anything's going to be a bellwether for 2024, I'd look at Virginia more than anything. I'll explain why maybe later. But it's really more so an issue of moral victory, right? Which, hey, we went up 0.2%, so there's a moral victory. Again, it doesn't change that much in Kentucky, but I think at least Republicans maybe pulling a minor upset and winning a race on the most, probably one of the more major elections of 2023. Going into 2024, that would have been something that gives you a little bit of confidence, maybe some optimism, even if it's just a moral victory, right? It would have been nice. It would have been a nice thing to kind of have. And like I said, it doesn't look like we are going to have it. Again, you know, we still got about 46% of the votes left. Kentucky does report early votes first, so we still do have election day votes to come in. So, you know, they've not called it. I'm not saying it's over. I'm not an expert on elections, to tell you the truth, so I can't really make that call either way. It doesn't look good. But still, regardless, like I said, you know, if you're a Republican, tonight would have been maybe a night where you maybe acquire, you know, a moral victory, something to kind of put in the war chest for 2024. And it just doesn't look like you're going to get that. Now, at the same time, does this mean we should be super doom and gloom about next year? Well, I've said since about 2021, I've been saying 2024 is not going to be an easy election, right? Don't chalk up Biden's unpopularity to think that, oh, it's going to be a cakewalk. I mean, that's just not true. And I think that reinforces it. At the same time, though, I think when you look at a lot of these different races, again, Kentucky did not favor us, but also I don't think really has a lot of implications for the national level, because this is not really a reflection of what you're going to see in 2024 on the ballot nationally at all. It's a totally random and kind of weird race. This is interesting, though. We look over here in Ohio, and there are two major issues here on the ballot. It's they have two major referendums going on right now in Ohio. We have a constitutional amendment to enshrine the right to an abortion, right? So the constitutionally protect abortion in Ohio. I did not expect this to do well for us, to tell you the truth, because when you look at, I mean, frankly, most pro-life ballot referendums, or just pro-choice, whatever, most abortion referendums on the ballot since Roe v. Wade got overturned have not gone well for the pro-life side, unfortunately. And so, you know, it's not particularly surprising to me how this is doing. It's also Ohio, so you may say that's a Republican state, but at the same time, it's a Midwestern Republican state, right? It's kind of a Rust Belt populist Republican state, not necessarily as socially conservative as, say, a state like Alabama or Tennessee or something maybe. So I did not expect us to do that well on this abortion referendum. But, I mean, you look right now, we're getting pretty emphatically destroyed here, right? 64.5% yes, constitutionally amend and protect the right to an abortion. I'm pretty sure that's basically limitless, too. I mean, these people are, to my understanding, voting on even late-term abortions and stuff like that. And they have almost, it's almost a 2-to-1 margin, right? You see no is at 35.5%. Now, something to keep in mind, the way Ohio reports, it's a blue mirage state, right? And this is kind of how I believe it's gone historic. Actually, wait, hold on. Let me check that to be sure. Because I forget this sometimes. Yes, okay, Ohio is a blue mirage state, which means generally it's blue votes that come in first, and then you'll see the red, the shift red. So the final margin on this may not be as embarrassing as you're seeing right now. Clearly, no just went up by 0.2. But, you know, I would estimate it's probably still going to be 60-40 or something. I think it's looking right now that yes, again, for anyone just tuning in, this is yes to constitutionally protect abortion. It seems like it's pretty clearly going to pass. And, you know, I'm not super surprised by that. I can't even say I'm disappointed at this point. I mean, I am disappointed in the sense that, you know, there's clearly still a lot of people in this country that want to murder babies, but this is basically what I've come to expect, right? Is like I said, And this isn't something important to point out, regardless of how you feel about it. Every time abortion has been on the ballot since Roe v. Wade, pro-life has gotten destroyed. Just absolutely destroyed. Now, why exactly is that? I mean, that's up for debate, right? I think there is truth to the idea, perhaps, that it's, Roe v. Wade being overturned has made the pro-life movement complacent. You're maybe not seeing the same type of turnout, whereas, the left and the pro-choicers are super vehement in terms of, hey, Roe, right? Roe-vember, here you go, right? So, that has something to do with it. I don't think the pro-life movement politically mobilizes nearly the way that they should. And this has been one of my criticisms of, a lot of the pro-life movement is, they do a lot of virtue signaling online, which is fine, I suppose, right? But when it comes to getting people to vote for these propositions or getting us on the ballot or making sure, going to the churches and making sure all the pro-lifers turn out to vote, there's very little organization here. Whereas with the Democrats, the pro-choicers, etc., they are, how they are, right? They know how to get people to vote on the issue of abortion. And when it comes to pro-life mobilizing electorally, it's virtually non-existent, right? And this is why I've also pointed out and said, I know a lot of people don't like the fact that Donald Trump is kind of staying out of the issue of abortion in his presidential campaign. And I've been saying to people, I'd be like, look, I don't like that. On a principled level, I don't like that. But at the same time, what do you expect him to do? Because we can't touch the issue of abortion if we don't win political power. And as you're seeing, not just in Ohio, but Kansas and I think even some very deep red states, every time this issue is on the ballot, pro-life gets destroyed. Now, I don't think that, obviously that's not a good thing, but it is the reality, right? We need to change culture and I guess mobilize and also just do a better job mobilizing in terms of getting people to vote for these propositions before we demand, right, that national politicians, presidential candidates advocate for like a blanket ban on abortion, which is obviously what the pro-life movement like ultimately wants, and I think you see a vote like this, again, do I love that principally that, Donald Trump staying out of the issue of abortion and kind of, lukewarm, fence sitting on it? No, I don't love it. But at the same time, you also understand where it comes from, because clearly we as pro-lifers have a lot more work to do in terms of making this issue politically viable. And I don't think it is helpful or productive to get destroyed in every single election just because, we stood firm politically in terms of, the issue of abortion, because I think that's a false dichotomy, right? We'd rather stand for life than win elections. This is what you hear a lot of people say. And honestly, there have been times in my life where I've said this, I'm pretty sure. So, you can go back in when I was younger, I've said things like that. So it is true. So I understand that sentiment. I know where it comes from. But at the same time, you literally by definition cannot stand for life if you do not win elections, right? It's not a binary choice in terms of, I'd rather a candidate, like, let me ask that question principally, right? Okay, obviously as pro-lifers, ultimately we want to ban all abortions, minus perhaps arguably when it threatens the life of the mother, but that ultimately is the ultimate pro-life position, right? But what is the actual productiveness? How does it help for a presidential candidate, for instance, to literally just go out there and lose by like 50 on this issue and say, we stood for pro-life, we stood for life? It's not a debate on the internet, right? This is real policy that's affecting real people. I would rather get a marginal gain in terms of regulating abortion politically, and again, because that actually does save babies. Even if it doesn't save all the babies, it saves some babies. That's incremental progress versus losing all the elections, giving all the political power to the pro-choicers and saying, at least we stood for our principles. How did you stand for your principles? That's not standing for principles, because you didn't save any babies. Right? That's just virtue signaling. So, I think you look at something like this, it kind of vindicates what I've been saying, which is we have a lot of work to do in terms of changing culture around abortion before we really frankly have the right to get particularly mad at conservative national candidates for not being as pro-life as we want. Because as you can see here, when you put the issue on the ballot, it, figuratively speaking, poor choice of words, but it is true, it's a massacre. Okay, so that's what we're seeing over in Ohio. Again, current margins: 22% in, 63% vote yes in favor of abortion, in 0.5%, I should say, 36.5% vote no. Again, you will see this margin narrow because Ohio is a blue mirage state. Sorry, so Republican votes come in second typically, but that's not a great margin. Okay, that's a pretty sizable margin to overcome. If I were to be realistic, I don't think it's going to happen. And I really didn't expect it to happen, truly, in a state like Ohio, because, like I said, it's not the most socially conservative state. Even if it's a red state, this is not the Bible Belt, right? It's kind of the new era populist Republican. And so, you'd expect them to be a little more squishy on certain social issues. And that's more or less what we're seeing. Now, I do want to see, do they have it here? I want to check in on the marijuana referendum, because do they have it on here? So last I checked, I don't know if it's still like this, but last I checked, and this was frankly kind of here it is. Yeah, frankly kind of amusing. Okay, so you see right here, right? So there are two, issue 1 and issue 2. Issue 1 is the abortion one that we just talked about. Issue 2 is a referendum to legalize marijuana, okay? And I really don't have an explanation for this other than it's Ohio, okay? Like, Ohio moment. Or what can we say other than this? Because the referendum to legalize marijuana is doing worse than the referendum to legalize abortion by a pretty significant margin. Okay, you take a look here, right? Ohio issue 1, yes, has 63%. For the marijuana referendum, they only have 56%, okay, of the vote, okay? And that's still a pretty big margin, but when you consider, again, it's a blue mirage state, this one is less guaranteed to pass than the abortion one. Okay, now likely both will probably pass, but I'm just pointing out, right? The one that's in more danger here is the marijuana one, which makes absolutely no sense to me, okay? Because marijuana, at least you would think, it's actually kind of amusing. You would think marijuana is a more bipartisan issue than abortion, right? Because there's a lot of Republicans that support legalizing weed. I am not really in that camp. I know that's a hot take, to tell you the truth. I'm not on the pro-weed train or whatever. I mean, I don't particularly care about it, but I just consider that, the fact that I kind of find most stoners to be obnoxious, and, most stoners tend to be hippies and whatnot. And when you look at the history of marijuana and how it was the drug of like 1960s liberalism, that's how it started. Just kind of from a practical or meme-worthy perspective, I kind of hope to see weed not be legalized, because it just smells like crap, and it just is crap, Again, I don't really care. So before, the pro-weed people come in the chat, how can you say this? What about your freedom? I don't care about it that much. I'm just saying, like, if you ask me, if you put this ballot in front of me, I'd vote no. Because I just find it in many ways to be an obnoxious drug. And in many ways, it's a liberal drug, like in its essence, okay? I'm just saying, that's how I feel about it. Whatever, get mad at me if you want. Regardless, okay, I know a lot of Republicans disagree with me on that, which is why it's very surprising here. Again, marijuana is doing worse than abortion. How does that make any sense? Okay, the only explanation I really have for that is maybe this issue is not as culturally lost as we think it is, because, as much as I'm not really, the biggest fan of weed as a drug or whatever, right? I've long thought that the issue is totally lost, in terms of just culturally speaking, right? And I've kind of come to grips. I've always been at grips with that, actually, is, it's probably going to get legalized everywhere eventually, and it is what it is. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but whatever, right? But I think you're seeing here, I don't know what it is, whether it's the drug epidemic in America or something like that, or people are tired of smelling weed everywhere, which I think is frankly a valid thing to be annoyed by, because I feel like you go around America these days, you just smell too much weed and it's disgusting, in places you don't want to smell weed, you know what I mean? Places around kids, all of that stuff, or the stoners are just so obnoxious or whatever it is. I'm not exactly sure, but it is, again, right, interesting to see somehow marijuana is doing worse than abortion on the Ohio ballot. Ohio moment, what can we say? We'll be giving you the updates here. And then Kentucky, Cameron has closed the gap a little bit. Let's talk a little bit here about this Mississippi race, okay? So with less than 1% of the votes in, this is out of just one county, and it's only a couple hundred votes. But the Democrat Brandon Presley here is winning. So again, folks, I'm actually not sure exactly who's particularly favored in this race. I would assume it's Tate Reeves. But this is another just stupid governor's race. So long story short, you look at the Mississippi race, Tate Reeves is a very weak, milquetoast, lukewarm Republican. Okay? He's just not the best. And he also is the clown who, changed the state flag and all this different stuff. He's just weak. He kind of sucks. Corporate stooge in many ways. And the Democrat he's running against, Brandon Presley, unlike Andy Beshear, actually is running a very socially conservative platform in terms of, he's pro-gun and all that different stuff. I'm pretty sure he's pro-life. You could correct me if I'm wrong there. So he's running as like an old school Southern Democrat, more or less. And Tate Reeves, not the strongest Republican, not the most popular Republican. This is only a couple hundred votes from one county, so I wouldn't read too much into it. But that'll be something to keep an eye on, this Mississippi race here. Because this is another place where a Republican is vulnerable, but at the same time, I don't know if this race has a lot to do with nationally what's actually going to happen. Because again, you have a weak, not so conservative, lame, disliked Republican against a Democrat who, again, I don't know if I would trust a Democrat. And I'm not saying if I lived in Mississippi, I would vote for Brandon Presley, but he's actually running a very conservative campaign. And kind of running, like I said, again, as like an old school Democrat, but maybe more populist on certain economic issues, which you consider the fact Mississippi, I don't know if you guys have ever been there. It's a very poor state, right? It's a lot of poverty in that state and stuff like that. And, so it much like Louisiana, the state it borders, you could see that sort of old school populist Southern Democrat thing appeal to people. I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. I mean, Tate Reeves, I would assume the Republicans have built something of a political machine in Mississippi already. I don't think he's in the biggest danger, but it is something to watch. Anyways, we check back here at Kentucky, and I'll check chat in a second. I know I've been talking for like 20 minutes and have not even checked the chat, so we'll go there in a second. Daniel Cameron has closed the gap a bit here by a few percentage points. 61% in, Andy Beshear 52.4%, Daniel Cameron 47.6%, and that lead, which was before, what was it, about 50,000, it's now narrowed to a little bit less than 40,000. So he's closed the gap a little bit. Is it going to be enough? I don't know, to tell you the truth. Like I said, it would be a nice moral victory. Okay, it really would, going into 2024, if we can pull off this race. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm not an electoral expert. I'm just parroting what electoral experts are saying. But you are seeing with every vote dump, and this is how it does work in Kentucky, right? We're inching closer and closer. It's a little bit less than 5 points. That's still a lot to make up, but we'll see. We'll see what the final margin is here. In the meantime, let me see if we got anything in the chat. Let me read our super chats here. Sheeny Beanie for $5 says, Vinny, are you an abolitionist, i.e. banning and criminalizing abortion? If so, refer to yourself that way. Thank you for the 5. I mean, yeah, I am an abolitionist. I do think we should ban and criminalize abortion. The thing is that I don't know if I want to refer to myself that way, because I don't think most people know what that means. And this is my problem with, frankly, a lot of different terms that like right wingers on the internet try to pick up or adopt for themselves. If you go to, I mean, I guess if you say you're an abortion abolitionist, then, you know, fine. But if you just say you're an abolitionist to people, I don't think people would truly understand what that means. And I think in terms of semantics, we need to use words that people do understand, right? And, you know, I don't think the term pro-life is insufficient or even really a bad term. In fact, optically speaking, I'd argue it's a good term, right? You're pro-life. You are in favor of life. Life is a good thing. Life is a beautiful thing, right? So, I mean, if you want me to call myself an abortion abolitionist when you ask the question, I mean, yeah, I am. But, you know, I don't see the demand between, abortion abolitionists or pro-life. I mean, they mean the same thing. I would rather use the term that people understand. I mean, but I don't know. That's the way I kind of see it here. Okay, we take a look here at the Pennsylvania Supreme. Okay, that's not good. Yeah, we're this whole night. Okay, can we win something? Can we win something? Can we go 1 for 7 here tonight? I don't know, but Pennsylvania, I don't know much about this race, but you look at the Supreme Court election here over in Pennsylvania, only 12% in. A lot of it is Philadelphia, so, you know, that's something to consider. But the Democrats are up about 80-20. Okay, about 80-20 in the Supreme Court race here. Let me see how much is out of Philadelphia. So, out of the 339,000 here, I mean, there's a pretty sizable share that is from Philadelphia, but it's not actually everything. I mean, there's a lot of rural areas here that are also deep blue. I'd have to assume this is the mail-in vote and stuff. In fact, let me check here. It depends on the county, apparently. So, I don't have much of an explanation for this. But Washington County, which is on the Ohio border, with 24% in, the Democrat Supreme Court justice has 77% of the votes. I don't know how the heck that happens. I don't know what's going on in this race. I don't know much about it, but yeah, we seem to be just getting destroyed everywhere tonight. Okay? Sorry. The Republicans, because I am frankly done identifying myself with that crap party and on a partisan way. But the Republicans, okay, seem to not be doing too good. But let's check in here on the Virginia state legislature. Like I said, I think, you know, I would favor Democrats to win this overall because Glenn Youngkin is not on the ballot. But at the same time, Glenn Youngkin is a fairly popular governor. He actually has about a 60% approval rating. I think he does a good job for his own state. You know, I know a lot of people call him, you know, insufficiently conservative and all that different stuff. From everything I've heard behind the scenes, he actually is pretty with it and is about it. But, you know, I think he does a pretty good job in terms of being in a blue state and trying to get things done and getting things done that win over the Democrats that he needs to win over, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, he has, I believe, a 60% approval rating, which is obviously really good. You know, Virginia is a blue state. He's a Republican governor. He narrowly got in, and now his approval rating is very good, and people are happy with him. So that does favor Republicans here. At the same time, he's not on the ballot. Okay, and him not being on the ballot, it also is something that obviously favors Democrats, and obviously Democrats, after they lost the governorship 2 years ago, they're going to be more energized. But if we can hold on mainly, I think Democrats already have the state Senate. If we can hold on to the House of Delegates, that's a really good sign. And I'd argue kind of a state like Virginia in terms of Glenn Youngkin and all that stuff. Of all the elections going on tonight, I'm not even saying this necessarily has the biggest impact on 2024 in terms of predicting things, but this race right here is probably the most nationally significant. Okay, I know the main focus is going to be mainly on the Kentucky governor's race because that has the most buzz and the most headlines. But in terms of, because culture war issues, as you know, with Glenn Youngkin and all that stuff, are very central in this race, right? And you know, it's the most straight line sort of Democrat versus Republican race we will see tonight. So I would say if there's any bellwether for 2024 that you can predict from tonight, again, none of them are that good, but this is probably the strongest one to watch. Okay. You know, I know when Democrats likely, although it's not guaranteed, but likely win in Kentucky, they're going to celebrate. Again, that's sort of an anomaly. It's not very nationally significant in terms of the issues and the stuff that's going on, and the candidates wouldn't pay the biggest attention. If you're looking at 2024, though, and how it's going to go, this is the biggest one to look at, okay? Like I said, Democrats are favored to win back the House of Delegates. If we hold on to it, or even if we very narrowly lose it, maybe do a little better than we were projected to, overall, that's a little bit of an optimistic sign. If Democrats sweep this, which they are currently up 29-21, but you know, I assume that the very contentious races here are not yet decided. You know, if Democrats sweep it, probably not the best look. If we somehow hold it overall totally convincingly, again, I don't know how likely that is, then I'd say, again, this is kind of the biggest bellwether to look at for 2024. Again, folks, if you would like to super chat the show tonight, feel free to do so. I will read them periodically here. Zachary for $5, thank you very much, says, we should honestly use national funding to punish state party incompetence. If you're going to fail anyway, why waste funds on you? Thank you for the $5 there. Actually, I think we missed some other super chats here. Okay, let me scroll up. But reading Zachary's here right now, well, that's something very interesting to also point out in the Kentucky race. Let me take a sip of water really quick, because my voice is still not fully recovered, although not doing too bad tonight. So with Daniel Cameron, okay, another thing, because people, again, probably looking at this and they're like, why are we getting so destroyed? This is Kentucky. It shouldn't be like this. So the RGA, right, the Republican Governors Association, which is headed by Kim Reynolds, basically left Daniel Cameron out to dry. Basically did not fund him or really help him or put any effort into this race whatsoever. Which is, in many ways, kind of mystifying, because this is only one of two governor's races going on tonight. It's one we want to flip. Like I said, going into 2024, even though it's not the most important predictor, it would be a nice moral victory, at least, right? To, okay, you know, give some optimism to the party, energize new life, right? Because as you know, Republicans have gotten, they are really, I should say, in an electoral drought right now. But Kim Reynolds refused to fund Daniel Cameron, who is the governor of Iowa, for people who don't know. She is the head of the Republican Governors Association. You ask why that is. Because, of course, as you could imagine, you definitely know which characters in this party are going to blame Donald Trump for whatever happens tonight. Well, the reason that is because, A, Kim Reynolds is more focused right now on endorsing DeSantis and getting behind DeSantis than actually doing her job in terms of, you know, helping out the governors. And also, because DeSantis did not endorse Daniel Cameron in the primary, he endorsed Kelly Craft, who, again, by all accounts, was not electable and not even, I think she finished in like third place in the primary or something. Totally irrelevant candidate. And Donald Trump got behind Daniel Cameron when he was already winning and projected to win the race, right? It's basically a matter of Kim Reynolds is being petty because she's trying to get involved in a national campaign, and Daniel Cameron's getting caught up in it. And long story short, Daniel Cameron himself is not the best candidate. It was kind of just the best one that was available in this race. And that's why Trump endorsed him, by the way. I know everyone says, oh, Donald Trump's handpicked candidates. You know, in many cases, that's not actually true. He's just, he throws his endorsement behind the person currently winning the primary to give him a minor boost and a little bit of strength and confidence and maybe turn out some more Republican voters. That's exactly what happened here. Okay, Daniel Cameron in this race did not strongly attach himself to Trump. Trump didn't even really go campaign for Daniel Cameron. So, you know, and you could criticize that. You could say he should have gone and done that campaign. But, you know, we're addressing right now the people who say, oh, this is all Donald Trump's fault. Okay, well, Kim Reynolds And by the way, they also say Donald Trump is all about ego. He puts his own ego and personality above the party. Okay, well, in this race, again, we had a pretty generic Republican. I know people are going to tie him to Trump because of the Trump endorsement. When you look at it, he's a generic Republican. He was endorsed by Trump because he was already the attorney general and the front runner in the race. Okay, it's not like this is Donald Trump picked some random person in Paducah, Kentucky to go run for this office. Okay, this is an established person. But because of the blood feud with Donald Trump and all that stuff, Kim Reynolds and the Republican Governors Association decided to starve out a candidate here, not give them any resources, not really even try to help them, all because, again, of a personal feud with Donald Trump, because Kim Reynolds supports DeSantis in the primary. And then they will turn around and say Donald Trump's ego is what's ruining this party. Okay, what about Kim Reynolds' ego? What about the ego of all the anti-Trump Republicans who, in this case, again, are screwing over, again, a pretty generic, average, not super even that Trumpian Republican? You know, this is the Attorney General of Kentucky. This is, you know, a Republican that most people should be behind, generally speaking. How can you turn around and say that it's Donald Trump's ego and they're going to blame Donald Trump's ego for losing this race? When again, this is not even a super Trumpian candidate. He didn't tie himself to Trump. One could make the argument maybe he should have, but he did not. And then blame Donald Trump because this right here happens, even though it's the RGA's job to fund the Republican governors candidates. That's why they are called the Republican Governors Association. And they refuse to fund him because Ron DeSantis and the personal beef there, which, by the way, Daniel Cameron has nothing to do with, absolutely nothing to do with. It's just, you know, but that's the Republican Party for you, okay? But then, as you could imagine, they're going to turn around and blame Donald Trump for the election results tonight. Last I checked, Donald Trump is not on the ballot, okay? Show me which of these candidates is Donald Trump on the ballot. In fact, show me which one of these candidates is even particularly all that quote-unquote MAGA, right? Like I said, Daniel Cameron, generic Republican, Kentucky Attorney General, did not tie himself heavily to Trump in this campaign, okay? So stop pretending like, oh, because Donald Trump endorsed a frontrunner in the primary at the last minute, that makes all the difference. And all these people didn't vote for Daniel Cameron because of Donald Trump. No. Donald Trump, by the way, won the state of Kentucky by what, like 20-something points? That doesn't even make any sense, fool. What are you talking about? Okay? But that's what they're going to do. They're going to blame Donald Trump for this, even though, again, if I were to make any argument as to what we could have done better, the RGA, headed by Kim Reynolds, a Ron DeSantis supporter, should have actually been trying to help a Republican governor's candidate instead of putting their own ego, in front of that, but whatever. But also, B, to make up for that, maybe there is a case to be made that, yes, Donald Trump should have gone there and helped campaign for Daniel Cameron. At the same time, Trump is busy with his own election and legal battle. You know, I'm not particularly blaming him, but if you're to make any argument, it's that Donald Trump was not involved enough in this race. Okay, but you know, this is what they do. When Donald Trump isn't on the ballot, and even when these candidates are not super MAGA or Trumpian, they just blame Donald Trump because it's truly a derangement syndrome. Okay, what are you going to do on the abortion one? Is this Donald Trump's fault too? Is it Donald Trump's fault? Conservatives, Republicans, is it because of Donald Trump's unelectability that a nonpartisan, formally, because there's no party on the ballot, right? A nonpartisan ballot referendum is doing poorly for the conservative side. Is that Donald Trump's fault? What about Virginia? Which, by the way, okay, so it was 29, now it's 30. It's 30 to 23. I mean, you know, it's all going to come down to the swing races, who probably won't be decided until later in the night. But it does seem like, from what I've been hearing, that, they are probably going to flip the House of Delegates here. But, okay, let me shut up for a second, whatever. What about Virginia? Is that Donald Trump's fault too? Because this really entirely is a referendum on Glenn Youngkin as a governor, not Donald Trump. And everyone actually does know that, okay? That's what this is about. Now, like I said, Virginia is a blue state, okay? You know, and so I'm not going to go and attack Glenn Youngkin if Democrats do win the House here, okay? That's not what I'm here to do. But that's all to say, this is a referendum on Glenn Youngkin and him as a governor, and everyone knows this, and certain culture war issues. Again, what does this have to do with Donald Trump? What does it have to do with Donald Trump? I don't know, but you already know. I mean, I haven't read Twitter yet or X, but you already know this is coming. That's why I'm getting ahead of the narrative, because that's what they're going to do. Let's take a look at Mississippi here. Again, only like a couple counties reporting. It's not a whole lot of votes. Doesn't matter. This is going to change very quickly when major areas come in. But let's say that Tate Reeves loses tonight, okay, to this, again, conservative Democrat who's run a very good campaign to his own credit for Mississippi. Okay, so you have a very weak neocon Republican who caved on social issues and caved on the state flag very notoriously, and is kind of a corporate stooge and is not particularly liked. He's now taking the lead, by the way, so there you go, now at 3%. But let's just say hypothetically he loses. Let's just say hypothetically, just to get in front of the narrative. What would that have to do with Donald Trump? Because the way I see it, it's actually kind of on the flip side, which is when Donald Trump is not on the ballot, in most cases, it seems to me actually that that's when Republicans seem to lose and lose badly, which does not spell a great future for the party, okay? Because we're going to have to move on from Donald Trump at some point, right? Even if he wins and is the president, after 2028, you're going to have a step forward. So I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it actually seems to me that when Donald Trump is not on the ballot, you don't see the type of turnout that you otherwise would want to see or kind of need to get Republicans across the line, especially in rural areas. So, if anything, I'd say that's the flip side. I would actually say that because you keep seeing generic Republicans underperform and or lose in basically every election since Biden has been the president, that actually suggests to me that in 2024, again, because we have repeatedly seen generic Republicans lose and lose time and again, we cannot run a generic Republican. This idea, if it was anyone except Donald Trump in 2024, we'll be fine. Biden's unpopular, blah, blah, blah. That's the generic sort of electability argument for, say, DeSantis or Haley or Scott or whoever. I don't buy that at all. I actually think it's the opposite. Because, you can blame the Trump endorsement. He puts out a press release on Truth Social, and that makes all the difference. Okay, but when I look at it, I look at the overall campaign. And when I look at the overall campaign, it seems to me that in a lot of different cases, generic Republicans, right, just people with R's next to their names, just generally have not been doing too good, with the exception of Glenn Youngkin, since Joe Biden became the president, right? So it actually suggests to me in 2024, if we want any chance, it's not going to be an easy election. Like I said, anyone who's telling you that 2024 is easy or in the bag, they're lying to you. They're grifting to you. That's not true. It's going to be a very close and contentious election. It suggests to me that we actually kind of should want to and probably need to run someone sort of who's not a generic Republican, because it seems to me generic Republicans continue to lose and lose. But anyways, let me stop ranting here. I'll put up the Kentucky results on the screen as we get to more of these super chats. But let me get caught up here on the rest of the super chats here. Sheeny Beanie for $2 says, many were anti-slavery, but few were abolitionists. Thank you for the $2, Sheeny Beanie. I mean, I get what you're saying, but I still think it ultimately, comes down to semantics in many ways. And if you want to say slavery got abolished under Lincoln, I mean, Lincoln wasn't an abolitionist either. That's kind of a false narrative of history. So, we're all trying to get to the same point. I mean, the reason I don't go around saying I'm an abortion abolitionist is because it's not because I'm not. It's because I think that effective language and effective communication is important, and most people associate our movement with the term pro-life. Okay, so that's why It's the same reason I generically call myself a conservative, right? Because if you break down my ideology, I could say, I'm like a nationalist, populist, conservative, blah, blah. I just say I'm a conservative because that's what people understand, right? So, am I by definition an abortion abolitionist? Yes. But am I going to adopt a term when I'm trying to communicate with people that just sounds very, non-communicatable? No, right? That's why even though I technically probably am a reactionary by definition, I don't call myself that because no one understands what it means. And even if they do, it's not as coherently, communicatable or recognizable, I should say, as the term conservative, right? Now, on the front of abolitionist, back in the slavery days, you could make that argument. At the same time, the abolitionists it was a known, like, that was what they called the movement, right? That's what they called themselves back then, So that's why the term was easily communicatable. Our movement today, we call ourselves pro-life. If I'm in a conversation with someone, I'm going to say pro-life. What are you? I'll say I'm pro-life because that's the vernacular we use. So I think you're just fixating on the semantics. It really doesn't matter. We agree that abortion is murder, and we want to make it illegal. It doesn't really need to be that particularly complicated. I think it's entirely a semantic argument. Dollar for dollar, which I think people waste their time on way too much. Anyways, at 80%, we actually went down. Daniel Cameron actually went down a couple points here. It's now 53.4 to 46.6. This is with 80%. And Daniel Cameron trails by, almost 100,000 votes, right? Somewhere around Asian math, give or take around 80,000 within that ballpark. Yeah, it's not looking good. Okay, that's a lot of margin to make up within 20%. All right, so don't color me surprised because I didn't feel the most optimistic about this to begin with, but it does seem like Andy Bashir is going to hold on here and win. And that margin may close a bit because we still have a lot of rural counties here in Kentucky that have not reported anything. But the margin is quite a bit. It's a pretty sizable margin. You also consider, let's take a look. So in places like Louisville, like Jefferson County, something else to consider. Yes, a lot of rural counties have not reported anything, but so Lexington is basically about done. All right, so we'll write that off. 93% in Louisville itself. Jefferson County still has 22% of its own vote left, and so do some of these blue areas. I'd have to imagine, right? So I don't think it looks great, but we can pray for a miracle here. I suppose. I just see a margin that's probably a bit too big for Daniel Cameron, but like I said, you still have some rural counties here that really have not counted a whole lot. I don't know how big these counties are, though, in fairness, so I wouldn't count on them being huge. Just here comes the red tsunami. But it's generally not looking great for Daniel Cameron, and if he does lose by about this margin, that would actually be worse than the 2019 election. So, not great. Okay, like I said, would I take that and try to apply that logic to the national level? No. I know a lot of people are going to try to do that. You're going to hear that in a lot of media because people don't understand this. For the record, let me reiterate that this race has very little to do with predicting 2024 because it is an anomaly. Okay, these circumstances reflect nothing that you will see in 2024. Again, to reiterate, if you're going to look at anything in terms of predicting 2024, it is this Virginia race, because this is the most closely tied to generic partisan Republican versus Democrat and Glenn Youngkin and the current culture wars that currently engulf the country. Okay, so that's what I would take a look at more so than this Kentucky race. But at the same time, you know, I am rooting for Daniel Cameron. It's not looking good. Let's get on here to the rest of our super chats. Dollar for $2 says, thoughts on Zach Wilson and who will win the Heisman? Thank you for the 2. Thoughts on Zach Wilson? I don't know. He's kind of funny, I suppose. I don't really watch the NFL, so I don't really have a comment on his actual play. But he is kind of funny. And who will win the Heisman? It's hard to say. November will decide the Heisman. Right now, I'd have to imagine the front runner's probably Michael Penix. But I do think if Bo Nix, I know I'm picking Pac-12 players right now, but I don't really see who else it would be. Who else would it be? Who's even the Heisman kind of conversation right now? If Bo Nix beats USC this week, which I am a childhood USC fan, so I hope he doesn't, and I don't like Oregon at all. But if he beats USC this week, and he beats Washington in the rematch, I would say it probably goes to Bo Nix. But I don't know, because who else is in the Heisman race? It's not going to be Jaden Daniels, because he lost to Alabama and just didn't do great. You know, there's honestly not a lot of great quarterback play across the country this year. I would not bet on it being J.J. McCarthy at all. Because, first of all, you have the scandal, which is just going to tarnish his name. I'm also just not that impressed with him. He hasn't played any... Oh my gosh, he's so good. He hasn't played anyone. Michigan hasn't played anyone. So... I'm going to say Bo Nix. I'm going to say Bo Nix wins the Heisman Trophy, okay? But November will decide that ultimately. Because very often, you don't really figure out the actual Heisman, until the last week of the season or the conference championship game, because that dynamic changes a lot in this month. So, but right now, if I were to put someone, I think it's going to be Bo Nix. Michael Penix is the current front runner. I think Bo Nix is going to tear up USC, especially on defense. And then I do think Oregon's going to win the rematch. I think Oregon's the better team overall than Washington. And neutral field, I think Oregon definitely wins that game. So I think it's going to go to Bo Nix in the end. So there's my Heisman prediction. But like I said, it's November is what's going to decide it. So we got to kind of see November first. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Horizons Bear for $2 says, I hope Trump goes after Rana after tonight. Thank you for the 2, Horizon Bear. I mean, I hope he does in general, because I too am not the biggest fan. Excuse me. I too am not the biggest fan of Rana, and I never have been. But at the same time, I will point out, Rana chairs the RNC, right? Brief interruption, folks. Here we have it. They have called the race in Kentucky. This is not surprising, although it is disappointing. Stacey Abrams, Democrat, wins the governor's race in Kentucky. I am, of course, memeing. I forgot to say that. I was going to say that at the start of the night. I was going to say at the start of the stream, we're calling the race for Stacey Abrams, but no. Andy Beshear, called by the Associated Press, has officially won the governor's race. They believe that the margin is too insurmountable. I look at it, I would tend to agree. There you go. So for anyone just tuning in, it's over. The fake moderate in Kentucky has beat the weak, just not well-funded Republican. And this is not going to make any difference on Kentucky politics, because they still have a supermajority in the legislature. But, this, unfortunately, this fake moderate, fake populist is gonna survive in office another term. So you don't like to see it, but it is called there by the Associated Press. Again, to reiterate, Andy Beshear and Stacey Abrams, she's the vice governor, have won the governor's race in Kentucky. Again, not the most important race, but you don't like to see it. Ohio is still counting very slow here. I guess we'll follow. So we'll mainly follow this in the Virginia race as we go on here in the night. Mississippi is interesting to look at. I mean, I don't know what the polls were saying. My gut says I don't think Tate Reeves is in all that much danger, because we're talking about a Republican machine in many ways in Mississippi. But at the same time, At the same time, Brandon Presley has run a good campaign. He's running as a conservative, and Tate Reeves is not a very good governor. So we'll keep an eye on this. I mean, I still think the political machine will get him across in Mississippi, but we'll have to take a look. And in the Virginia legislature, let's see here. Let's see. Still, you know, the important races are still up for grabs. I'm not an expert on all these seats. I do know in one of these we have the OnlyFans or the prostitute or whatever who's running as one of the Democrats. You guys might have seen that. I don't know what district that actually is. If someone in the live chat could let me know, because that will be interesting to see. Will the prostitute win her district? Okay, that'd be a very sad day for America. That may be historic. I don't know. Has a sex worker ever won elected office in the United States? I have no idea, but if you're totally unfamiliar, long story short, this Democrat running for state house in Virginia, I think she, if I'm not mistaken, I think she just straight up has an OnlyFans. Okay, so let's, you know, if all else, I just really hope, I don't want to see that day where an OnlyFans girl gets elected. Okay, so can we hold that off at least? All right, anyways, let's get back here to their super chats. I'll leave this here on the screen, though. These are the current results going on in the state Senate. Actually, I'll leave the Ohio one on the screen. Okay. Oh, more interruptions. They've called it. Okay, so the AP has also called the abortion referendum as passed. So yes, seems like it's passed with only 36% of the vote in. I mean, that does seem to be a slightly early call, considering we only have 36% in Ohio's Republican votes. Usually do come in later, but when you look at the margins, I can't really say I particularly disagree with that call. It seemed to me since the beginning that this was going to pass, and the AP has called that. So unfortunately, the right to an abortion as protected by the Ohio State Constitution looks like it is going to pass, and the AP has called it in the state of Ohio. So we're already 0 for 2 on the night in terms of official calls. Let's hope we can pull something off in Virginia, because, you know, that's again the most nationally pressing, in my opinion, in terms of going into 2024. Obviously, abortion is the most morally pressing, but we're still. And again, this is still funny, right? They've called the right to an abortion. The marijuana one is rated as very likely to pass, but it's still too close to call. Okay, so I still am mystified on how, especially in Ohio, because you would think that's a less social. I don't know. The marijuana referendum is underperforming the abortion referendum. Okay, so I don't know what's going on with that. You know, maybe like suburban liberal moms are, Rovember, all that stuff, but they're also kind of secretly fed up with smelling weed everywhere around where they take their kids. I don't know. You know, that's an explanation. I truthfully don't know. You take a look here in Mississippi, Reeves with 6%, which doesn't mean much, but with 6% has a pretty sizable lead on Presley. So that's what we're currently monitoring at the moment. Virginia usually takes a while, so you know that's probably we're not gonna be able to really make a determination on that yet. We continue to get killed in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court race. Okay, so that just is not looking good at all. All right, let's get back here to the super chats. We kept getting interrupted by live calls. All right, so let's take a look at what we got here. Horizon Bear for 2. So I was responding to that, right? In fairness, though, Horizon Bear, tonight in Kentucky at least is not necessarily on Ronna McDaniel, because the RNC's job is to do the national stuff, right? The job of the RGA, the Republican Governors Association, which is headed by Reynolds, the DeSantis girl, is likely more so to blame for what you saw here in Kentucky. So I too want to get rid of Ronna McDaniel. That's not a defense of her. I've been very against her for a while, frankly, from the start. But it is important to point out what we saw in Kentucky is not necessarily her fault. It's more so the RGA's fault, who's, again, headed by Kim Reynolds. We went up 0.1% in the Supreme Court race. So there you go. We're back, boys. The comeback is on. It's going to be the Philly special. We're coming back in Pennsylvania. All right, anyways, let's get on to the rest of our super chats. Republican Thinker for $5 says, I know we can't talk about it without you getting a strike, but the Crowder situation right now is wild. Well, we can talk about it in certain regards. I'm not gonna, I never plan to read it here on stream. You can go find it on Twitter and all that. But long story short, the Nashville shooters manifesto has been leaked. Steven Crowder and his outlet were the ones to uncover that, so props to them for that. And just like I said, I'm not going to read it or whatever, but if you want to go see it for yourself, frankly, it's not particularly surprising to me. I mean, we kind of expected that's what would be in the manifesto, but it has been released, and YouTube is basically censoring any reading or reporting on it. Okay. Now, what I would say about that is, you know, I do know I'm not saying I agree with it. I do know their argument that, hey, violent stuff is not really tolerated on YouTube. I mean, we got a strike once for the same crap, where we were like reacting to a video of violence. So, you know, you can make the argument, oh, consistency of community guidelines or whatever, but it is absolutely newsworthy, right? It's discussion of a newsworthy event, right? That was a newsworthy event. The manifesto is leaked. People are reading and reacting to it, but to my understanding, YouTube is not allowing that on their platform. So, you know, we're not going to just be stupid and get ourselves a strike. I mean, I just had the last strike we had expire, so we're not going to just do it. Again, if you want to go read the contents of it for yourself, you're free to do so as a, you know, free-minded individual, right? But I do think that, you know, obviously YouTube's decision to abuse, in my opinion, their community guidelines to censor the ability to actually report on newsworthy things, you know, it's just totally backwards and hypocritical in many ways, because, you know, and you think about it, we're allowed to talk about the Israel war, right? You know, you talk about stuff like that, a lot of that stuff is graphic in conversation in terms of what you're saying. But if you read that manifesto on YouTube, it's, you know, too violent for the platform. But, you know, talking about the things that, say, Hamas says or whatever, like that you can report on that. It's very contradictory, but you know how YouTube is. I mean, that can't be surprising to anyone. But yeah, thank you for the 5 Canadian Republican Thinker. Again, folks, if you would like to super chat the show tonight, feel free to do so. I'm currently reading them here as we kind of have a lull or a pause or a break in our reporting results. But again, folks, to reiterate for anyone who has just tuned in, abortion, the pro-choicers have won in Ohio. Democrats have won in Kentucky. Andy Beshear will hold on to the governor's seat there. Weed is likely to be legalized in Ohio. In the Mississippi governor's race, very early on, but the Republicans do have a pretty sizable lead there. And in Pennsylvania, Republicans are getting destroyed on the Supreme Court. Virginia legislature, it's just frankly too early to really make a decision. We'll have to just see how that goes throughout the night. That's the current results as we read here the rest of our super chats. Horizon Bear for $5 says, white suburban women are the reason why the GOP are losing. Thank you for the 5, Horizon Bear. They are a reason, okay? I would not say that they're the only reason, all right? I want to put all the blame on them, because overall demographic change has a lot to do with it. Okay, look at California. That's not just white suburban women, and look at a lot of states. So they're not the only reason, but yes, as a matter of overall trends, they especially as it relates to Trump, the Trump era and beyond, they're certainly doing the GOP no favors. Okay, but it's not the only reason. Demographic change has stuff to do with it. Younger people getting older and voting and stuff, that has stuff to do with it too. And underperformance too in rural areas among the sort of disaffected working class white men that got Trump elected in 2016. We've seen a lot of elections where their turnout slips off, right? I think they actually say the only major demographic that Trump lost ground in 2020, allegedly at least, was among white men. You know, he gained with all the minorities and stuff, but he actually lost white men. And marginally in terms of margins compared to 2016. And at least when you look at the numbers we are told from that election, that had a pretty big part to do in, the Midwestern, especially election results. So, I'm not going to blame it all on them. But like I said, you are right. They certainly do the GOP no favors. Thank you for the $5. Horizons Bear, dollar for $2 says, look at Jaden Daniels' stats versus Bama. He got hurt. I know excuse me. I probably got to blow my nose. I know he got hurt. I'm not saying he played bad, but that's the reality of the Heisman Trophy. Okay, is that that would have been his Heisman moment if he beat Bama. He didn't do it. He got hurt, unfortunately. It's not his fault, but that's how the Heisman Trophy goes. He's not going to win it. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. He's not going to win the Heisman Trophy because he didn't have the Heisman moment. That was his chance against Bama. I mean, he can go beat, Texas A&M? Who do they have left? Like Texas A&M and Florida and someone else, I think. I mean, he can do well in those games, but it's just not going to give him the Heisman moment. He's not going to play for the SEC championship. It's not going to happen, There's no Heisman moment left for him. It would have been Alabama. It didn't happen. There's nothing left that it can't happen in, I put Bo Nix as the favorite for me because I see the Heisman moments about to come. He very likely is going to tear up USC this weekend because everyone tears up USC on defense. And like I said, I think Oregon's going to win the Pac-12. I think they're going to beat Washington in the rematch. So if he's able to do that and he beats Oregon State too, that's, going to be a ranked matchup. The path to the Heisman Trophy for him seems pretty clear. Because he plays USC, and then he's got Oregon State, who that will be a ranked team, right? Oregon State's like a top 15 team, and then he's going to beat Washington. If he does all that, that's a bunch of ranked wins for him in Heisman moments. The Heisman Trophy is his, right? With Jaden Daniels, the Heisman moment, the flashy games, the iconic signature games are what really win the trophy for you. And he early in the year, right? Lost to Florida State. Ole Miss, he played great in that game. Wasn't his fault, but they did lose. Alabama, he got hurt. There's no window left for him to really claim the Heisman, So that's the way I see it. In fact, I would be willing to bet money on that, to tell you the truth. Like I'm pretty confident that his Heisman window is closed. I think really it's really a race between Penix and Nix right now. JJ McCarthy, like I said, I think with the Michigan scandal, he probably wouldn't win it anyway. If he does win out, beat Ohio State and all that stuff, he could win it. I don't think he's going to do any of that, though. But there's my read on the Heisman. We look how we talk more about college football than we do the actual politics. We love the show, okay? I should just I was going to start a college football show this year, and then I didn't have the time for it. So maybe next season we'll start a college football podcast. Because truthfully, I think I'm better than some of the. I think I would be better at doing that than some of the current podcasters, the small time ones, obviously, like not Josh Pate or anyone like that. But some of these analysts, especially you see on ESPN these days, okay? Oh, here's our like token diversity female college football analysts. They don't know what the heck they're talking about, okay? So frankly, I think we should do this. But anyways, all right, moving on here with our super chats. Zachary for 2 says Abrams would still win a race to McDonald's. Thank you for the $2, Zachary. Stacey Abrams wins every election ever. Did you not know this? Okay, have you not seen the Star Trek episode? Stacey Abrams is president of the world. Okay? Have you not seen that? Do you not know that? She actually won every election ever. And according to Star Trek, she's president of the world. So this is true. Thank you for the $2. Republican Thinker for 10 Canadian, thank you very much, says, here in Canada, Trudeau is choosing favorites. Basically gave parts of Canada carbon tax exemptions for 3 years for voting Liberal and said others, if others want the same, they should vote Liberal as well. Thank you for the 10 Canadian, Republican Thinker. I didn't hear about that, but that's insane. Okay, that's one of the more insane things I've ever heard. Okay? He exempted the places that voted for him in Canada from having to pay the carbon tax, but the conservative places still have to pay the carbon tax. That, I mean, Justin Trudeau is a dictator, okay? You want to talk, oh, who's the most authoritarian guy in the Western Hemisphere? Is it Joe Biden? Is it, I don't know, Nicolas Maduro? Is it the Castro brother that runs Cuba or whatever? It's Justin Trudeau, okay? I'm saying it on the record. Justin Trudeau is the most authoritarian and corrupt leader in the entire Western Hemisphere. Oh, but Vince, what about Venezuela? And that's up there. That's up. I'm not saying it's not. But Justin Trudeau is the biggest despot and tyrant in the entire Western Hemisphere. Okay? And I stand by that, frankly. I stand by that. It's very true. In the Americas, at the very least. And that's insane. Like, and to be clear, Republican, he just said that openly. He said, I am going to remove the carbon tax for the people who voted for me, and then the places that didn't, they still have to pay the carbon tax, okay? And that's legal in Canada? Because I think even in the United States, like, if Joe Biden tried to do that, the courts would strike it down. Like, it's very illegal. You can't just selectively govern like that, you know? So, CA Conservative says, you live in the South, Vince. The fact that you don't already have a college football show makes you look like a Yankee. Well, in fair, I don't have the time, okay? I'm a full-time college student in the South, all right? I was gonna start one. In fact, fun fact, after like week 2, after Texas beat Alabama, I had an entire podcast. I sat it down and recorded it at like 4 a.m. that day, breaking down the Texas-Alabama game, and I never uploaded it because I was like, I don't have the time to do this, okay? So, you know, if one of you guys wants to move to Florida and be my assistant and do like half of my editing and logistics for me, then maybe we'd have, and frankly, half of my schoolwork. That's a joke. Don't honor code me. Then maybe we'd have the time for the college football show, okay? Maybe we have the time for it, all right? Because believe it or not, like I followed this sport since I was a kid at like 5 years old. Okay, so I'm not saying I'm an expert on watch all the games or whatever, but I'm pretty decent. I'm pretty decent at covering the sport. Okay, and frankly, when you look at the people on ESPN, all right, bunch of amateurs, and Fox, by the way, I think I could be a better podcaster than RJ Young and Heather Dinch. Really? That girl knows anything about football? Get out of the sport. Get out of the sport. Dollar for $2 says Daniels is stuck carrying our poverty defense. This is true. You have Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams in a race for, you know, who's trying to carry the more sorry team around them. This is true. This is true. All right, folks, with that said, thank you for the super chats. Again, if you would like to super chat to support the show tonight, feel free to do so, but let us get back to covering our elections here, folks. I mean, honestly, I don't know if there's much else to talk about, but I would like to kind of keep my eyes on this Virginia race right here. Let me see if New York Times is saying anything, because I don't know enough about these individual seats to really make a comment here. But let's see if they have like live commentary or something from the expert. Let's see. Doesn't seem to be saying much. Okay, well then we'll just have to wait and see. And there's apparently also elections going on in Colorado and New York. I don't know if anyone cares, frankly. I mean, I think these are the important races everyone is concerned with. Marijuana, they've still not called. I mean, marijuana is leading by 11. Okay, big pot, big hemp is still in the lead. But hilariously, they still have not called that. The AP has not called that. Tate Reeves is in the lead here with 14%. I'm curious to see how this race actually turns out, okay? Kentucky, like I said, they've already called. And in Pennsylvania, I'm curious. What the heck is going on in this race? Why are we losing so badly? Look at this thing. Look at this. I mean, would it be surprising to me for a Democrat to win the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania? No. What is this margin? 64-35? I would have to imagine. I don't know much about this race. This is the one before tonight. I didn't even research at all. But I'd have to imagine this has got to be like a big abortion-related race. That's my only speculation. I don't know. Any of you guys who actually live in Pennsylvania or are familiar, you can let me know in the chat in terms of what's happening here. Because like I said, I didn't know anything about this going in, but this is just ridiculous. 64 to 35. Why don't they just call it now? Okay, because we're not gonna make this up. All right. This is worse than 2022. Okay, this is worse than This has to be worse than Doug Mastriano against Josh Shapiro, right? The governor's race in 2022. This literally has to be worse. This is awful. Awful result right here, okay? And in terms of Pennsylvania in 2024, I mean, this is a partisan race. So I don't know how hopeful I am about flipping the state back in 24, but you know, let's take a look. Let's take a look. Loxy says no one cares. Are you saying no one cares about college football, Loxy? I'll have you know, you anti-American hooligan. Frankly, college football is literally the most American sport that there is. Okay? I'm sorry you elitists don't care for a sport that like focuses on the South and the rural Midwest and small town teams and stuff. I'm sorry you want to concentrate power in our big cities and our freaking soulless corporations. But frankly, there are patriotic Americans that do care about college football, Bloxy, okay? And they're tired of being lectured. I don't even know if you're talking about the football stuff, but they're tired of being lectured by anti-American corporate elitist shills who want to look down on the sport because they say it's college, who cares? Well, frankly, I'm a real American and I do care, Bloxy. Okay. Oh, he says he's not even talking about college football. All right, never mind, Bloxy. You are forgiven. You are forgiven. Marijuana and abortion is now equal. Well, that's interesting. They haven't called it. I think they count the early/mail-ins first. No, they do in Pennsylvania, but also it depends on the county. And also, the margin is just ridiculous. I mean, that's really what I'm looking at. I'm not surprised the Democrats are leading at this point, but the margins just have not been great. Have not been great. So let's see here. Because rural PA has barely any votes and most are from Philly and Pittsburgh. I mean, true, but still, it's still not a great margin to see, guys. Okay, but hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. But Kale Sims says, "Damn, Vince needs a target tonight. You're done, lol." I am done. Well, what else? What else is there to talk about? We're losing all of them. Okay. I've basically monologued for like an hour and 20 minutes here. So now all we can do is just watch the results and be like, wow, that's unfortunate. Okay. That's unfortunate. But anyways, Jarrett Griffith for, let's see. He says, Vince, what's up, man? Love the coverage and show. Too bad weed is going to be legalized in Ohio. Hate the smell of that. Yeah, I agree. It's not surprising. I feel like we've basically lost the culture war on weed. And, you know, I'm not here to stand like an old man on the porch and be like, yeah, but I don't like seeing it legalized. I really don't. And I think, I just think the culture around it is just so lame. And frankly, liberal, right? It is the drug of liberalism in many ways. And I know Vince, what about freedom? I'm not here to like break down the doors of potheads, although that would be kind of funny. But in all seriousness, it's not about that. It's about, you know, is this substance who, again, you know, liberals have fought a culture war to legalize it and normalize it and destigmatize it for so many decades. Do we want to just hand that to them? And do we want to just hand a culture where, you know, all the kids are frying their brain cells and they claim it's not bad for you when that's not true? It's very bad for you. You know, it is on so many levels. You know, people can get mad. I don't want to see weed legalized. What do you want me to do? Well, what do you want me to say about that? You know? And I know what people are going to say. Oh, well, Vince, what about like tobacco? What about nicotine? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, but here's the difference. Men smoking pipes and cigars and cigarettes literally built America. they built the West in general, right? They built the, like, right now in Britain, I think they're talking about like banning cigarettes. The lads smoking cigarettes built civilization. What have potheads ever done? What have potheads ever done to contribute to civilization? Nothing. In fact, all I've ever seen in recent American history is a bunch of potheads protesting and destroying civilization. That's the difference. You anti-American hooligans. Okay, that's the difference between tobacco and marijuana. And that, frankly, also is a difference between, like, tobacco and alcohol. Because people are going to say, oh, do you want alcohol to be illegal? It's like, again, that's the difference, right? Rum-drinking men and whiskey-drinking men built this country, you unpatriotic... you just unpatriotic. I'm not even going to finish the adjective. You unpatriotic, okay? All right? Whereas weed... all weed has done is breed a bunch of liberals throughout the 1960s and beyond. Okay? All weed has done is breed a culture of a bunch of, like, degenerate hippies who, you know, protest against civilization itself. Okay? And I'm not saying that's how everyone who smokes weed is. Okay? I know many conservatives who smoke weed. I have friends who smoke weed and stuff. But that's how I feel about it. Right? And even the friends I have that do smoke weed, like, and this is the thing too with my friends who do smoke weed. I'm friends with them because when they're sober, they're like energetic, fun, cool dudes. Every time I see them smoke, it just brings them down, and they're just like dead, like dull, like retards, frankly. Like, that's what they are. That's what they become when they smoke weed. And they're literally no fun to be around. Like, they have zero energy, you know? Which I'd argue that's the point of marijuana and the movement behind it, right? You compare that to, like, nicotine or caffeine, or even to a degree like old school guys drinking alcohol, right? What does that naturally do to you? I'm not endorsing the substances, but what does that do? It brings you up. Right? It makes you belligerent, or, like, you know, nicotine is a nootropic. It makes you focused or whatever. You know, it gives men kind of this little boost of energy, right? Even if it's not good for you, it is true. It kind of gives men this, like, boost of energy, right? When you do those things. And coincidentally, right, especially with, like, nicotine, you know, there's a whole anti-smoking movement that's been pushed, right? People don't really smoke cigarettes anymore. I'm not saying they're good for you. I'm just pointing this out. Nicotine is a nootropic. It brings men up mentally. It focuses them. In some cases, it kind of, like, enrages them. What is the biggest threat to an order or system? What's the biggest threat to the current system? Uppity, energetic, focused, angry men, right? So what is the best way to get rid of that, right? What's the best way? And by the way, nicotine also boosts testosterone, right? So what's the best? And again, I'm not endorsing the substance. I'm just pointing this out. I'm pointing out the psyop, but that's what I'm trying to explain to people, right? So we have this whole anti-smoking movement in America in terms of cigarettes and cigars and just the tobacco, right? Okay, bad for your health, whatever. I get that. But notice what it's been replaced with. It's been replaced with the food system, which is full of a bunch of crap that hurts testosterone. And because people don't smoke as much anymore, they eat and get fat. That's what's happened to our country. Okay, so now you have, like, a bunch of fat men with man boobs. Okay, and then on top of that, what do? They say, oh, smoke weed, bro. So then you have a bunch of hippies, right? A bunch of weed smoking potheads who are, like, mentally dull and stupid and very easygoing and lax about, oh, yo, dude, far out, dude. Those men are no threat to the system. And this is, again, why people ask Vince, why are you against legalizing weed? What's the big deal? Again, I'm not saying it's the biggest issue to me. In many ways, we lost the culture war on that. I'm not here to be like an angry guy on the porch about it, but I recognize the psyop behind marijuana, and that's why I don't want to get along with just the movement to say, oh, it's not a big deal, it's not bad for you, whatever. You know, And before you bring it up, I'm perfectly okay with medical applications of it, okay? I'm not here to shill for big pharma. Much like fentanyl, okay? Fentanyl is used in medicine, so are opioids. There are legitimate medical uses for these things. So in the same light, you know, if people use CBD or whatever to numb pain or to do certain, that's fine. But in terms of recreational marijuana, The culture, the psyop here, I wish more conservatives understood it, but it's not. It's always a hot take for me. But that is the fundamental reason when people ask. That's why I'm anti-weed. That's why I'm anti-weed, and that's why I kind of feel like that's the greater psyop behind weed. But as you're seeing in Ohio, I mean, it's not surprising to me. We're probably going to lose that, and that's the way it is. Anyways, giving you continued here, reporting here on these results. The Democrat... The lead has narrowed. We're now only down by 20 in Pennsylvania, so let's hope that narrows even more as the red votes come in. But we're still down by about 20 in the, the Supreme Court race there. And I know people are going to say, oh, but the Republican votes are going to come in. Yes, but also people forget in Pennsylvania, I believe it's one of those states where they're kind of open to mail-in ballots till very late. They don't count all the mail-ins or early votes first, right? So you're going to get the red comeback. But then what you'll see once again, as usual, is like, the fortification happens and the mail-in ballots come in, and that's how it always goes in Pennsylvania. And then the Democrat kind of extends the lead again. So, I don't feel great about this, but they haven't called it yet, which is, I think, worth something. We go look the Virginia state legislature race. It's still kind of just deadlocked. We'll have to see how this turns out in the end. And then let's see. Issue 2. They still have not called it in Ohio. That's the marijuana issue. It looks like it is going to pass, though. And in Mississippi, with 20% in, Tate Reeves is holding on to about a 16% or a little bit less than 16% lead. So it's looking pretty decent for him, at least. But again, to tell you the truth, I guess, is it a good thing? Oh, look, a Republican is holding on. Okay, first of all, it's Mississippi. The guy's supposed to win by a lot. This shouldn't even be a notable race. The reason it's a notable race is because Tate Reeves is a terrible Republican governor. But, beyond that, oh, wow, we end up winning in Mississippi. I mean, I guess you take what you can get, but it's not like this is a flip or anything. So, truthfully, I don't know if I even really care who wins this, because Tate Reeves is terrible and Brandon Presley is... at least the platform he's running on is pretty conservative. So I'm just really neutral on this. I don't care for Tate Reeves at all, but it is good news from a partisan perspective in terms of Republicans. Hey, the surge by Presley doesn't look like it's going to work, and he is going to win if this all holds, obviously. At the same time, in Mississippi, I mean, is 16% really all that impressive for Republicans? It's not terrible, because Mississippi does have a pretty sizable black population and all that. I think it's actually like 38% black or something. So, you do have Democrat demographics in places like, Jackson and whatnot. But, whatever. I'll stop being a pessimist, okay? Republicans are winning. It's worth noticing. But really, I think the two races to watch at this point: Pennsylvania Supreme Court, can we close the gap? Virginia state legislature, who ends up taking the House? State Senate favors Democrats. Democrats currently hold it. I would project that locks regardless. If Republicans can take the House or, not lose too badly, it's a decent sign for 2024. Like I said, that race probably... The only one, frankly, tonight that really has... Well, these two, I would say. These two right here, Pennsylvania, Virginia, the only ones that I think have real predictive implications for 2024. So it'll be interesting to see what turns out in that. But let's take a look here. Did we get any super chats? I don't think we did. Again, folks, if you would like to super chat as we sit around and watch these results, feel free to do so. I mean, I don't know how much longer we're going to go tonight, but, I'm... Because I don't know if my voice can make it the whole night, frankly. I think you can hear it. It's like, But, we're good for now. And it's now officially 20. Okay, so the Republican has closed the gap decently in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Part of the other reason I wasn't so optimistic is because these Midwestern Supreme Court races have just not been going well for Republicans overall. You have the Wisconsin one. I forget. I think that was a few months ago. I forget exactly when it was, where Republicans lost by 16 in the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. And if you understand the politics, right? Wisconsin is a more red-leaning state than Pennsylvania. It's a purple state, but it's more red than Pennsylvania. You don't expect to lose any statewide election by 16 as a Republican, and they just got destroyed there. So, you know, that's also part of the reason I'm just have no optimism about Pennsylvania either, because it's like if this is how Supreme Court races have been trending in the Rust Belt, the trend lately is not on our favor. But let's see if anyone's commenting on it. No, nothing here. But you know, I don't know. Let's see if we can close the lead, I guess. You know, still a lot of Republican votes to come in, but you know, Pennsylvania. Let me take another sip of water. I know you're used to seeing in a lot of these elections, you know, the blue mirage where Democrat votes come in first, then Republicans come back. But like I said, the issue with Pennsylvania is it's both, right? Because they don't have a set system. Hey, we count early first and then election day. It all just randomly comes in, and they take mail-in ballots late and all that stuff. So, you know, closing the gap is good, but I also wouldn't just bet on the fact that we're going to just, you know, overcome, because even if we do, you might get some more Democrat vote dumps, because Pennsylvania's entire election system is just a mess. So, you know, let's just watch it and see what happens. But we do continue to close in. Now not so much, but you know, it's currently 59.8 for the Democrat, 40.2 for the Republican. The actual raw vote margin is about 242,000. And that's the current news in Pennsylvania. But let us now get on. I know we got some super chats. BJ Jarbo for $10. Thank you very much. Does not send in a comment, just a 10. Thank you for the 10, BJ Jarbo. I appreciate it very much. Dollar for $2 says Tate Reeves looks like a DNG nerd. Well, he is. That's the thing, he is. You know? And for people who don't know what Tate Reeves, the governor of Mississippi, looks like, look at this guy. Okay, you can't really see. Listen, Southern governors, okay, and I've been talking about my friends with this, you know, a couple times, not lately, but we've had this conversation before, okay, in terms of what a Southern governor should be. A Southern governor should, in a state like Mississippi, should not be a glass-wearing nerd, okay? They just shouldn't, all right? And it definitely doesn't help his image. It doesn't help his image at all, okay? You know, and really, yes, the politics matters first and foremost, but it just doesn't help that he's just a dork like he is. A Southern governor should be like Boss Hogg, okay? Like that's who I want. I want a Boss Hogg from Dukes of Hazzard. Like, that's who should be a Southern governor, okay? Wear a cowboy hat, you know, kind of like that, like, rich sheriff, you know, sort of vibe, kind of corrupt, but it's not like a national swamp style corruption. It's like a local corruption. It's sort of the endearing kind of, you know, charming type of minor corruption, right? You know, just a powerful Southern man who wears a cowboy hat and has the accent. Boss Hogg. Okay, that's what a Southern governor should be. That's what a Southern governor should be, okay? And instead we get people like Tate Reeves. Hi, everybody. I'm Tate Reeves. I'm a nerd with glasses. He looks like Peter Griffin. He's a skinnier version of Peter Griffin, all right? And it's not a good look for Mississippi. It's not a good look for Greater Dixieland as a whole. That's not who we should have representing us, okay? The image, I just don't like it, all right? The South needs cool governors. The South needs cool governors that, like, Saturday Night Live and all the, you know, Northeastern liberals make fun of, okay? If they're not making fun of how over the top Southern governors are, it's not a good Southern governor, okay? So I'm here to say, you know, Southern governors should be like Boss Hogg. Okay, that's what a Southern governor should be, right? And you look at, like, Kennedy, you know, the senator from Louisiana. I'll give him that, you know. And politically, he's one of the better Republican senators anyway. But, like, you think, like, that's what a Southern Republican politician should be, you know? Have the accent, kind of have the sort of, like, uber conservative cliche image to them, you know. That's what Southern politicians should be. They shouldn't be like Peter Griffin looking fools like Tate Reeves, you know. This is just true. All right, if Tate Reeves could have the same politics, which I don't think are very good for the record, but he could have the same politics. But if he was cool, if he came off as like a Mississippi man, you know, this election wouldn't even be paid attention to tonight, frankly. You know, like Brandon Presley wouldn't even be talked about. And that's the truth. That's the truth. But thank you for the $2, dollar for dollar there. And thank you for the 10 there. Who is it? BJ Jarbo. That's quite the name, by the way. I love the name. Thank you for the 10. Let me. Nope. Streamlabs. There. Oh, okay. Whatever. Thank you for the 10. Republican thinker for 5 Canadian says Palestine protesters in D.C. were holding signs saying decolonize Palestine, decolonize the U.S. Some serious unrest in America is soon to come. Thank you for the 5 Canadian. I mean, YouTube disclaimer, I seriously hope not. But it is true. This is very important to point out. It's like, I think the real reason... Alright, Streamlabs is just... I don't know what it's doing. If you ever struggle to wrap your head around the reason why the left actually supports Palestine, because on certain levels it doesn't make sense, right? Like LGBT, it's like then why don't you support Israel? Feminism, theocracy, like... The reason why so many American leftists and black nationalists and other sort of types, you know, support the Palestine side is because of that very phrase right there, right? You said the signs say decolonize Palestine, decolonize the U.S. They ultimately hope that minorities in the U.S. will kind of, again, God forbid, disavow, but this is what they're kind of cheering on, is sort of a similar uprising to, you know, what you saw on October 7th in the United States. So that's really what it's about. And that's why, you know, BLM, the Chicago chapter, you saw, they had that flyer that said, I stand with Palestine, and it had the paratrooper, like the Hamas paratrooper, right? It wasn't the Palestinian flag. It wasn't, oh, human rights or whatever. They put the actual Hamas paratroopers that parachuted in and like slaughtered those people at the music festival. Why are they doing that? Why do they side with Palestine, even though the politics don't really make the most sense if you're sort of a modern leftist on certain levels? Well, it's ultimately, yeah, you're right, because they're hoping for a decolonization of the U.S., quote unquote, right? And that's what it's really about. And I also saw they were like tearing down, they were desecrating statues and stuff too, in DC. So, you know, that's lovely. Sarcastic, of course, YouTube. And, you know, they obviously all the people doing that should be deported, but, you know, they're not, because that would make too much sense, right? That would be too fair and too just for the United States these days. But yeah, thank you for the $5. Dollar for dollar for $2 says Zinc Arkansas man for governor. disavow YouTube. But he says Zinc Arkansas man for governor. DeSantis is a DNG. And that is true. That is DeSantis's problem, is, you know, the sort of it factor when it comes to personality. It's very real. It's very real. But anyways, let's see. I think we're all caught up here on our super chats. Let's take a look back here at these results. Tate Reeves continues to hold sort of a, you know, between 14 to 17-ish margin. The Pennsylvania race with 52% in, the Republicans continue to close. It is now 57.1 to 42.9. Again, my only thing is that, like I said, with Pennsylvania, you will see the Republican close, and you'll see it open up again, because you know that, like, they don't count stuff in order. Okay, the election system in Pennsylvania is a complete mess. So I don't know what to expect, because no one knows what to expect. But it is good to see that you know, they've been closing the lead. but we'll have to see how it ends in the grand scheme of things. So that's the current status, folks. Let's see, Virginia. You know, the Democrats do seem to be closing in on taking the House, because I'm pretty sure Republicans actually held the state House before. So they do seem to be closing in on it, but, you know, it's ultimately coming down to how these races are going. Let's see. So of the races that have not been called yet, and keep in mind, Virginia is a red mirage state generally. You saw that in 2020, right? Republicans tend to lead first, and then Democrats close in. So that's something to keep in mind. But if some of these, races in Virginia that have not been called yet, you look at District 9. District 9 is, of course, where the pro-aliens are, or the prawns, or whatever they're called. The Democrats up 62-38. So they've not called that yet, but Democrat is winning here. District 10, another Democrat winning 58-42. And these are about with a little more than half of the vote in. So that's not good, because if that holds, then that looks like Democrats get 2 more seats, and they'll get even closer here to holding the House of Delegates. I'd have to assume it's 100, so I think 50 to 51 would be the magic number, right? But I'm not sure. Let's see. District 21, another uncalled race. Greater than we got almost all the votes in. The Democrat here is up 52-48. So that's also not a good sign. If that holds, Democrats will win there. That's 3. They now would have 45 seats. District 22, with more than 95% in, Republican is winning this one. So then that if that holds, that is one pickup for the Republicans. District 30, 89% in, Republican leads by 8. That's not too bad. District 31, 65% in. Republicans have a pretty big lead in this one, but I'd have to assume there's, you know, mail-in votes to count. Quote, hint, hint. But we're leading here. And then another Republican lead in District 41. So far from what I'm looking at, it does seem to be even. So this is just going to come down to the wire. We'll just have to see who takes this in the end. But it is important to keep in mind, if Republicans do want to flip the House, or keep the House, I should say, they got 18 calls to go to get to 50. Democrats only have 8. So if the final split in terms of these seats goes 50-50, then Democrats are going to win pretty decisively. But let's keep scrolling here to check these out. District 51, Republicans leading pretty big with 32%. District 52, no votes in yet. District 55, Democrats currently winning. So there's one for the Democrats. District 57, very narrow with 80% to go. But Democrats currently do have a minor lead, but that's pretty small. So we'll have to see what happens there. District 59, Republicans are leading that one. District 60. So like I said, okay, let's see. District 64, Republicans in 65. That's a very small lead, though. Who knows? That might change. Both of those might change. So as I continue to scroll down here, you see a lot of Republican. But again, these have not been called. This one here, Republican at 50% with only 53% in. If I were to, I don't know about this district, but if I were to guess, Democrats probably flip this one, because you know how Virginia usually counts. But I don't know. I don't know enough about the district. District 73, Republicans, Democrats lead this one. Yeah, it does look to me like Democrats are going to take the Virginia State House, which is not good. It was also kind of expected by me. I think what's really going to be telling is the final margin. Because if in the end it's relatively close, then like I said, you look to 2024, I think that's a decent sign, you know? Because it's still important to keep in mind, you know, Virginia is a blue state. Glenn Youngkin, there's going to be a natural sort of incumbent rebellion, and then Glenn Youngkin's also not on the ballot. So, you know, I wouldn't read too much into, you know, Democrats necessarily winning, which it does look like they're going to do when I'm kind of just counting up here, like what is left to go. But I still, hold on, I got a text message to respond to. I do think if it goes beyond like 55, 60 or whatever in terms of what Democrats pick up, that is kind of a massacre. And that's not very good. But if in the end it's like 51, 52, Democrats narrowly win it, then I think that's a good sign for 2024. But again, if Democrats take the House, their state House here, by a emphatic margin in the end, which they certainly could do. Not saying they will, they certainly could do, but it does seem like they're going to win it. Then that's not a good thing. But you know, we still have to wait and see. We still have to wait and see. You know, obviously neither side has won it yet. There are a decent amount of Republicans currently in the lead. I just consider that, again, you know, Democrats only have 8 to go to get to 50. Republicans have 18. And then you kind of count here, like, which, you know, of the uncalled races, what looks like it's going to happen. It does seem like that Democrats are going to take the state house here, but you know, it's not over. It's not over. I wouldn't call it over. So, you know, we'll have to see what happens, because you still have a bunch of uncalled races here, and I'm not enough of an expert on Virginia demographic politics or districts to tell you for sure. So anyways, Eric Peterson for $5 says, in Northampton County, Pennsylvania, voting machines have been having problems again. I did hear that, Eric Peterson. Thank you for the 5. And I don't know a whole lot about that story, but I did hear that there was an issue where they were flipping votes and they had to shut them down. You know, color me surprised, right? We're so shocked. Oh my gosh, voting machines are having issues. Big surprise, right? Big surprise. But anyways, thank you for the $5. Appreciate it very much. And that is true. That is true. And, you know, something to pay attention to. Okay, so while we were gone, the AP has called issue 2 in Ohio. So weed will be illegal. Ohio will become a pothead state. Not surprising. I still think it's kind of comical that it ran behind the abortion issue, although it is now caught up. It's now actually leading the abortion issue. So that does make sense. That does make sense, but yep, not surprising. Abortion passes in Ohio, and so does marijuana. So there's Ohio issues 1 and 2. Those are called. We can write that off. Again, folks, if you're just joining us, Kentucky has been called for the Democrat incumbent Andy Beshear. That's not surprising, although it is disappointing. Mississippi, Tate Reeves continues to hold his lead here with 37%. And in Pennsylvania, it just continues to get closer and closer. So we'll have to see what happens. I don't know how much longer I'm going to stream, frankly, because my voice hurts. And we also have to do the debate tomorrow. Okay, so let's not forget that. We have the GOP debate tomorrow, which I'm frankly more excited to stream. So I don't want to ruin my whole voice tonight, but... and which you can already tell, and you can probably hear is starting to go. But we'll hold on for a couple minutes here, okay? We'll try to hold on, see if anything moves. But and obviously tomorrow we'll have the full results for you guys here. But anyways, let's take a look. Thompson Spence says it's Jover. I'm by done. This is true. All right, you know what we'll do? We'll end the stream here around 10 p.m. So last call for super chats. Anything you want to send in, be sure to do it now. We'll kind of sit here and watch these results until about 10, and then we'll call it a night here. So anything you want to send in, do it now, or hold your peace until tomorrow night. Again, folks, we will be live tomorrow, live reacting to the GOP debate in Miami. So be sure to join us. Be sure to join us there. So, you know, let's take a look here. See, I'm already... All right, let's as we close this up, let me kind of go over some final conclusions for tonight, okay? Let me recap, because I know people tune in and out of the stream. All right, firstly, in terms of national significance, 2024, what does this tell us? Kentucky governor's race is disappointing. He's a fake moderate, but I don't think this really tells you anything in terms of 2024, okay? Pennsylvania, I would say these are the two to watch, especially when we leave the stream. How does the Pennsylvania Supreme Court race go, and how does the Virginia State Legislature go? These, in my opinion, are the two biggest bellwethers or predictors of the night in terms of what you may see next year for 2024. All right. Mississippi, again, I don't think it matters much. In these two, marijuana is a non-issue, I think, nationally. Abortion, I wouldn't say it predicts or not 2024. I would say, though, it does kind of reflect something I have long said, which is, you know, when it comes to the issue of abortion politically, obviously we are all pro-life, or abolitionists, as some people want to call it, but it's also important to recognize that it's not an issue politically that at the moment we're there on, right? Which is not good. At the same time, I think perspective is necessary. I mean, culture takes time to change, right? It takes time to, you look at any successful movement in history, including the abolition of slavery, or, you know, anything, right? It's always a long march. It takes a lot of time to get there politically to where national consensus is on your side. But it is important to point out, you look at a result like this, you look at what happened in Kansas. There's another referendum, and I forget which state was it. It might have been Kentucky or Missouri or something. Maybe it was Missouri. There's an abortion referendum there. Also failed for us miserably. It is important to point out, you know, most of the country is not with us on this issue politically in terms of pro-life, okay? And I think it's the job of long-term, you know, pro-lifers, Christians, conservatives, etc., to change, to move the needle on this issue, right? Well, that said, at the time being, you know, because I'm like looking at like pro-life circles right now, and they're already saying this whole idea that, oh my gosh, how dare the Republican Party and our candidates, and how dare Donald Trump not run on abolishing abortion nationwide in 2024? It's like, what's the utility of that? Truly, I ask you, what is the utility of that? I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, it's to protect life. We're pro-life, obviously. But, you know, I will once again reiterate, as I've been saying, you know, the past couple months, the idea that there is a choice or a dichotomy between winning elections and standing for like true pro-life is a false dichotomy. It is a false dichotomy. It frankly is a virtue signal to pretend that there is a choice between the two. By definition, you cannot stop abortion if you do not have political power. Let me reiterate that, because, you know, I see them saying it again. They always say this, okay? And then they label me like fake pro-life because I recognize the reality instead of the ideal, right? Let me say that one more time. You, by definition, at least under the current political system, I mean, if you want to, you know, abolish the American Republic or something, then that's a different conversation. But under the current political system, by definition, you cannot stop abortion without winning elections. Okay? So with that said, right? I too, you know, fellow pro-lifer, would like to see a world where abortion is made totally illegal because it's murder. And by definition, if it's murder, then it should be totally illegal, like all murder, right? However, we are not going to get closer to that world by virtue signaling, which is frankly what a lot of these people always want to do. All right, and I'm seeing my phone is blowing up already, seeing the same exact stuff, okay? Again, one more time. Let me say it one more time. I don't repeat myself. I'll say it one more time. You cannot stop abortion without winning elections. So there is no utility. Let me say that. There is actually no utility. It is a virtue signal. There is no utility to taking a position on abortion that you know is unelectable, losing that election, and then saying, well, at least we stood by our principles. Well, perhaps, but if you do not actually, you know, put effort into striving to enacting your principles, then what is the point of your principles? The point of your principles is to virtue signal and to purity spiral and to moralize, which is a very easy thing to do when you're not the man in the arena, right? Teddy Roosevelt quote, very famous, right? The man in the arena, the one who actually takes on the battle, is the one who's most virtuous, right? If you do not have a seat at the table, if you are not in the political arena, if you're not on the battlefield, it is very easy to, again, virtue signal and purity spiral. But by definition, we're not going to stop abortion if we do not get that seat at the table and win political power. That by definition, right? So to me, again, you know, if it takes time and increasingly, you know, for now, we have to take a stance on abortion that we don't truly like in terms of politics, not in terms of personal principles or cultural debates, but in terms of getting politically elected. And then over time, we move the needle further and further, more right-wing, more pro-life, etc. Then to me, that is the thing that is actually virtuous. Because that's what actually in real life is going to save lives and save babies, right? It's like the debate over, say, I don't know, like 20-week abortion ban, 15-week abortion ban. Some places do 6 weeks, some places do 3. And then people will turn around and say, but we should ban all abortion, so you're fake pro-life. It's like, I agree, but incremental progress ultimately is going to be realistically what saves the babies here, okay? My concern is stopping abortion. So with that said, if you want to stop abortion, then this really is the dichotomy. It's not the dichotomy of be pro-life or win elections. Again, that's a false dichotomy. The true dichotomy is take positions on abortion that you know are unelectable and hand all of the political power to the baby murderers who are just going to expand access to abortion, or take the side that is winnable and incrementally move closer to increasingly restrict and illegalize abortion. Those really are the two choices in our modern politics. Now, if you want to take a third position and say, well, then let's change the political system, fine. But I'm telling you right now, within the current political system, those are the only two choices. Take a relatively winnable position at the current moment and do, by the way, what the left has done on cultural issues for a long time, which is they take a winnable position they think most people will agree with, and then they march down the slippery slope. We can do the same. The same principles of politics apply to us. We slowly march up the slippery slope to increasingly, hey, you know, move America to become slowly more pro-life. But if we do that, we have to understand that patience will be necessary, incremental progress and acknowledgement of that incremental progress will be necessary, et cetera, et cetera. Or, like I said, we can do the virtue signal thing to do, which is, again, take a position we know is untenable, we know is unelectable, we know will not actually get us into political power, but say, hey, at least we stood for the true pro-life stance, then win the elections. And the only thing that actually happens in practice, in reality, outside of our little bubbles of virtue signals, is more abortions will happen, more babies will be killed, and, you know, in many ways, the pro-choice movement will only grow more politically popular because our side doesn't know how to actually appeal to people in the current moment as they currently stand. That's how it is. And I think you look at Ohio issue 1, I mean, that's what it comes down to, you know? And that's going to be something to consider for 2024 as well. You know, that really is how it is. You know, as much as I would like to see, you know, a truly like pro-life president in 2024, I understand fully why Donald Trump, you know, kind of takes a lukewarm stance on this issue, because he too understands that you cannot stand for pro-life. You cannot you cannot do anything if you do not actually hold the political power to do anything, right? So it's like, and by the way, to the pro-life, like, how about this? How about before we demand presidential candidates on the national level trying to win national elections, you know, take a firm pro-life position? How about we start trying to win state referendums like this, like Ohio issue 1? Oh, what's that? The pro-life movement doesn't do anything to organize? Oh, we don't actually organize to, like, you know, win the local referendums, but we tweet a lot. We tweet a lot about national candidates because, again, like, you know, the movement in many pro-life organizations and stuff are kind of just like media moguls and don't actually like get boots on the ground and do stuff. Oh, then, like, what do you expect? You know, what do you expect to happen? So anyways, in conclusion tonight, you know, none of these results are surprising. They are quite disappointing, but, you know, for those of you who are staying up throughout the night, watch these two. Because the only two I'd really apply to 2024, besides, again, kind of like how to handle abortion politically, it's these two. It's the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which is still up for grabs, and the Virginia State Legislature. These two are going to be your races that, dictate 2024 the most, or predict 2024 the most. That said, let me check the last few super chats here and call it a night. So Eric Peterson for $2 says, Pennsylvania voting has been a mess since COVID. Thank you for the $2, Eric Peterson. Yeah, I mean, it was probably a mess before COVID, but I COVID definitely exaggerated it all or increased it all. And yeah, I know we've seen Pennsylvania elections, 2020, 2022. This one, they're all a mess. They're all a mess, and they're going to continue to stay a mess. And this is very true. Thank you for the $2, Eric Peterson. And Eric Peterson for $5 says, we have entered into a trilateral with New York and New Jersey illegally. Thank you for the $5, Eric Peterson. And that is so true. Sadly, that is true, you know. What really should happen is let's just add Philadelphia into either New Jersey or New York, and then you actually have the state of Pennsylvania. This is very true. But anyways, thank you for the $5. I appreciate it very much. And if we got nothing else, then I will call it here tonight and try to rest my voice. Again, folks, we will be live tomorrow night for the GOP debate, so be sure to join us then. And until next time, be sure to leave a like before you go. Let's get to 150 likes before the end of the night. Alpha moves only. God bless. Have a very good rest of your night. Let's pray. All right, everyone, pray for Pennsylvania and Virginia, and peace.